Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and I'll begin with the chant, the meditation on Sri Ramakrishna. Om Hridaya Kamalamati Rajitam Nirvikalpam Sada Sada Kila Pedati Kameka Swarupam Prakriti Vikriti Shunyam Nityam Anandamurtim Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Nirupamamati Sukshmam Nishprapancham Nirhiham Gagana Sadrisha Misham Sarvabhuta Divasam Trigunarahita Satchit Brahmarupam Varenyam Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Vitaritum avatirnam jnana bhakti prashanti Pranaya galata chittam jiva dukkha sahishnu Drita sahaja samadhim chinmayam komalangam Vimala paramahamsam Ramakrishnam bhajamaha. This knower of Brahman, ever established in his own nature, full of wisdom, self-possessed and self-lighted, eternal, the very image of that Brahman who is pure bliss, shining ceaselessly in the lotus of the heart, one alone and without parts, pure and still. This Ramakrishna, Paramatman Supreme, we adore. Subtle, fine, and luminous, not even the shadow of the gross can ever reach him, for his purity is without parallel. Untouched by Maya's webs of deceit, beyond the dark river of time and desire, vast as the sky, this Supreme Lord, the very essence of Brahman as existence and light, this Ramakrishna, Paramatman Supreme, we adore. Saturated with divine consciousness, his home is in all. He hears every cry. He knows every pain. Under the weight of his compassion, his heart can deny the need of none. Born to raise the world with teachings of knowledge, love, and peace, born to bring mankind fresh songs of joy, this certain refuge of all, this Ramakrishna, Paramatma Supreme, we adore. So, I don't know if you remember, but when I started doing these readings for Shiva Maharaj, we started with the festival of Panahati, and there he is shown dancing with the devotees in ecstasy. It's a wonderful description of him. That's in the 12th chapter of the Gospel. And I thought I'd read a little bit of a description that some people gave of him dancing. First, I'll start with that, and then I'll go on. We're now in chapter 13. But we'll start with a little bit of a description of Ramakrishna dancing. Sharat, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, attended the Brahmo festival at Mani Malak's house in 1883. He records what he saw. We saw a wonderful scene. We felt that high waves of heavenly bliss were flowing in the room. All were completely lost in the kirtan. They were crying, laughing, dancing. Some, unable to control themselves, fell on the ground. Overwhelmed with emotion, others acted like madmen. The master was dancing in the center of the God-intoxicated group, now rhythmically going forward with rapid steps, and again going back in a similar way. In whichever direction he would move, the people, as if enchanted, would make room for him. An extraordinary tenderness, sweetness, and leonine strength were visible in every limb of the bodies of the master, and his face shone with a divine smile. It was a superb dance. In it, there was no artificiality of affectation, no jumping, no unnatural gestures or acrobatics, nor was there seen any absence of control. Rather, one noticed in the master's dancing rhythmical and natural gestures and movements of the limbs. It seemed as if an overflow of grace, bliss, and sweetness surged from within, like a big fish happily swimming over a vast, clear lake. Sometimes slowly and sometimes fast. It was as if the dance was a dynamic physical expression of the surge of the blissful ocean of Brahman, which the master was experiencing within. As he danced this way, sometimes he lost outward consciousness, and sometimes his cloth fell. When that happened, someone would fasten it tightly around his waist. Again, if he saw someone lose normal consciousness imbued with spiritual emotions, he would touch that person's chest and bring them back to consciousness. We felt a current of divine bliss emanating from the master and spreading in all directions, making it possible for the devotees to see God face to face. So this is what was going on during these, when Sri Ramakrishna was teaching, doing a lot of this teaching. He would be going into these states of inebriation, and everybody in the room would be completely uplifted by it. So we have just started the 13th chapter, which is the Master with M, and I'll begin at this section. He's just described some of the visions that he's had. M. Many a time you have said that a devotee who loves God for the sake of love does not care to see God's powers. A true devotee wants to see God as Gopala. In the beginning, God becomes the magnet and the devotee the needle, but in the end, the devotee himself becomes the magnet and God the needle. That is to say, God becomes small to his devotee. Master, yes, it is just like the sun at dawn. You can easily look at that sun. It doesn't dazzle the eyes, rather it satisfies them. God becomes tender for the sake of his devotees. He appears before them, setting aside his powers. Both remain silent for some times. M. Why should your visions not be real? If they are unreal, then the world is still more unreal, for there is only one mind, and it is the instrument of perception. Your pure mind sees those visions, and our ordinary minds see worldly objects. Master, I see that you have grasped the idea of unreality. Well, tell me, what do you think of Hazra? M. Oh, I don't know. Master laughed. Master, well, do you find me to be like anyone else? M. No, sir. Master, like any other Paramahamsa? M. No, sir. You cannot be compared to anyone else. Master, smiling. Have you heard of the tree called the Achinna? M. No, sir. Master, there's a tree called by that name, but nobody knows what it is. M. Likewise, it is not possible to recognize you. The more a man understands you, the more uplifted he will be. M. was silent. He said to himself, the master referred to the sun at dawn and the tree unrecognizable by man. Did he mean an incarnation of God? Is this the play of God through man? Is the Master himself an incarnation? Was this why he cried to the devotees from the roof of the kuti, "Where are you? Come to me"? Now, many times Ramakrishna would ask different people, and he asks M in the Gospel itself, "What do you think about me?" He's sort of trying to get him to express how he sees him. In one place he says to M, "What do you think of me? How many annas of knowledge do I have?" And M says, "I don't know what you mean by honest, but this much I'm sure of. I have never before seen such knowledge, ecstatic love, faith in God, renunciation, and Catholicity anywhere." Later he said, "It is not possible to recognize you. The more a man understands you, the more uplifted he will be." And Ramakrishna smiled and replied, "That is enough." So Ramakrishna tells us it is a thin ego that personages like incarnations possess. Through this ego, God is always visible. For example, a man is standing on one side of a wall, and on either side of which there's boundless stretches of land. And if there's a hole in the wall, the whole of the other side is visible. And if it's big enough, one can actually pass through the wall as well. The ego of men like incarnations is that wall with a hole in it. Even though they be on this side of the wall, they can see the boundless extent of land on the other side. The meaning of this is, though they've taken up bodies, they are always in the state of yoga. And if they like, they can enter into samadhi on the other side of the big hole that is merged in the bliss of Satchidananda. Again, if the hole is big enough, they can come and go through it. They can come down to a lower plane of consciousness, as it were, after the highest nirvikalpa samadhi. I always like this idea of a wall with a hole in it, and that's the image that Ramakrishna himself gave of what an incarnation is. And then he says he can go through it and then come back and tell other people what is on the other side. Ramakrishna was sitting on the steps of the southeast veranda of the Kali temple. Rakal, M, and Hazra were with him. He talked lightheartedly about his boyhood days. When it was dusk, he returned to his room and sat down on a small couch. Soon he went into samadhi, and in that state began to talk to the Divine Mother. He said, "Mother, what is all this row about? Shall I go there? Shall I go there? I'll only go there if you take me." The Master was to go to a devotee's house. Was it for this that he was asking the Divine Mother's permission? Again he spoke to her, perhaps praying about an intimate disciple. "Mother, please make him stainless." "Well, Mother, why have you given him only a particle?" And then he remained silent for a moment and said, "Oh, I see, that will be enough for your work." In the same state, he said, addressing the devotees, "That which is Brahman is verily Shakti. I address that again as Mother. I call it Brahman when it is inactive, and Shakti when it creates, preserves, and destroys. It's like water. Sometimes it's still, and sometimes covered with waves. The incarnations of God are a part of the Leela of Shakti. The purpose of the divine incarnation is to teach man ecstatic love for God. The incarnation is like the udder of the cow. The only place milk is to be God. God incarnates himself as man. There's a great accumulation of divinity in an incarnation, like the accumulation of fish in a deep hollow in a lake. Some of the devotees wondered, is Sri Ramakrishna an incarnation of God like Krishna, Chaitanya, and Christ? Sunday, September 9th, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna had finished his midday meal and was sitting on a small couch. Rakal, M, and Ratan were sitting on the floor. Ratan was a steward of Jadoo Malik's garden house and was devoted to the master. Now and then, when Ram Chatterjee and Hazra passed in or out of the room, and it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Ratan told the master that a yatra performance by Nilakanta had been arranged in the Jadoo Malik's house in Calcutta. Ratan to the master, "You must go. The date has been set." Master, "That's good. I want to go. Nilakanta sings with great devotion." A devotee, "That's true, sir." Master, "Tears flow from his eyes as he sings." To Ratan, "I'm thinking of spending the night in Calcutta when I go to see the yatra." That's a play about some divine incarnation, or like Rama, or it tells a story. Ratan, "That would be fine." Ram Chatterjee and the other devotees asked Ratan about a theft at Jadoo Malik's house. Ratan, "Yes, the golden sandals of the deity were stolen from the inner shrine room in Jadoo Malik's house. It's created an uproar. They're going to try to discover the thief by means of a charmed plate. Everybody will sit in a room, and the plate will move in the direction of the man who stole the sandals." Master, with a smile, "How does the plate move? By itself?" Ratan, "No, a man presses it to the ground." A devotee, "It's a kind of a sleight of hand. It's a clever trick." Master, "The real cleverness is the cleverness by which one realizes God. That is the best of all tricks." As the conversation went on, several Bengali gentlemen entered the room, and after saluting the master, sat down. One of them was already known to Sri Ramakrishna. These gentlemen followed the cult of Tantra. The master knew that one of them indulged in immoral acts in the name of religion. The Tantra rituals, under certain conditions, allow the mixing of men and women devotees. But Sri Ramakrishna regarded all women, even prostitutes, as manifestation of the Divine Mother. He addressed them all as Mother. Master, with a smile, "Where is Achalananda? My ideal is very different from that of Achalananda and his disciples. As for myself, I look on women as my mother." The visiting gentleman sat down. They were silent. Master, "Every woman is a mother to me. Achalananda used to stay here now and then. He would drink a great deal of consecrated wine, and hearing about my attitude for women, he stubbornly justified his own views. He insisted again and again, 'Why should you not recognize the attitude of a hero toward women? Won't you admit the injunction of Shiva? Shiva himself is the author of the Tantras, which prescribes various disciplines, including the heroic.' I said to him, 'But my dear sir, I don't know. I don't like these ideas. To me, every woman is a mother.' Achalananda did not support his own children. He said to me, 'God will support them.' I said nothing. But this is the way I felt about it. Who will support your children? I hope your renunciation of wife and children is not a way of earning money. People will think you are a holy man because you have renounced everything, so they will give you money. In that way, you will earn plenty of money. Spiritual practice with a view to winning lawsuits or earning money, or even to helping others win in a court to acquire property, shows a very mean understanding. Money enables a man to get food and drink, build a house, worship the deity, serve devotees and holy men, and help the poor when he happens to meet them. These are the good uses of money. Money is not meant for luxuries or creation of comforts or for buying a position in society. People practice various tantric disciplines to acquire supernatural powers. How mean such people are. Krishna said to Arjuna, "Friend, by acquiring one of the 8 siddhas, you may be able to add a little to your power, but you will not be able to realize me." One cannot get rid of Maya as long as one exercises supernatural powers. And Maya begets egotism. Body and wealth are impermanent. Why go to so much trouble for their sake? Just think of the plight of the Hatha Yogi. Their attention is fixed on one ideal only, longevity. They do not aim for the realization of God at all. They practice such exercises as washing out the intestines, drinking milk through a tube, and the like. And all that has just one aim in view. There once was a goldsmith whose tongue suddenly turned up and stuck to his palate. He looked like a man in samadhi. He became completely inert, and he remained that way a long time. People came to worship him. After several years, his tongue suddenly returned to the natural position, and he became conscious of things as before. So he went back to his work as a goldsmith. Everybody laughs. So it didn't change him, even though he'd had this state of, I think it's called kumbhaka, where you become inert like that. These are physical things, and they have nothing to do with God. There was a man who knew 82 postures and talked big about yoga samadhi, but inwardly he was drawn to women and gold, lust and greed. Once he found a banknote worth several thousand rupees. He could not resist the temptation and swallowed it, thinking he would get it out somehow later on. The note was got out of him all right, but he was sent to jail for 3 years. In my guilelessness, I used to think that that man had made great spiritual progress. Really, I say it upon my word. Mahendra Pal of Sindhi once gave Ramlal 5 rupees. Ramlal told me about it after he'd gone. I asked him what the gift was for, and Ramlal said it was meant for me. I thought it might enable me to pay off some of my debt for the milk. That night I went to bed, and if you would believe me, I suddenly woke up with great pain. I felt as if a cat were scratching inside my chest. At once, I went to Ramlal and asked him, "For whom did Mahendra give the money? Was it for your aunt?" That was the reference to Holy Mother. "No," said Ramlal, "it is meant for you." I said to him, "Go and return the money at once, or I shall have no peace of mind." Ramlal returned the money early in the morning, and I felt greatly relieved. Once Holy Mother said that the trait that she saw most in Sri Ramakrishna was his renunciation. He had completely renounced any kind of greed, or he couldn't stand to have money put near him. And in fact, I think one of the disciples put some coins under his bed one time to check to see if it was true, and he couldn't sleep until he found what it was and got rid of it because it was burning him. So his whole entire being was one of renunciation. Once a rich man came here and said to me, "Sir, you must do something so that I may win my lawsuit. I have heard of your reputation, so I've come here." "My dear sir," I said to him, "you've made a big mistake. I'm not the person you're looking for. Achalananda is your man." A true devotee of God does not care for such things as wealth and health. He thinks, why should I practice spiritual austerities for creature comforts, money, name, or fame? They're all impermanent. They last only a day or two. The visiting gentleman took leave of the master after saluting him. When they had departed, Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said to him, "You can never make a thief listen to religion. Everybody laughed. Well, what do you think of Narendra? He is splendid, M says. Master, yes. His intelligence is as great as his learning. Besides, he's gifted in music, both a singer and a player. And then, too, he has control over his passions. He says, I will never marry. M. You once said that one who constantly talks of his sin really becomes a sinner. One cannot extricate himself from sin. But if a man has firm faith that he is the Son of God, then he makes rapid strides in the spiritual life. Master, yes, faith. Faith. What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. He used to say, I've spoken the name of God once, that is enough. How can I remain a sinner? I become pure and stainless. One day, Haladari said, even a Jamala had to perform austerities to gratify God. Can anyone receive the grace of God without austerities? What will one gain by speaking the name of Narayana only once? At these remarks, Krishna Kishore's anger knew no bounds. The next time he came to the garden to pick flowers, he wouldn't even look at Haladari. Haladari's father was a great devotee. At bathing time, he would stand waist deep in the water and meditate on God, uttering the sacred mantra. Then tears would flow from his eyes. Once a holy man came to the bathing place on the Ganges. We talked about seeing him. Haladari said, what shall we gain by seeing the body of a man, a mere cage of the 5 elements? Krishna Kishore heard about it and he said, what? Did Haladari ask what would be gained after visiting a holy man? By repeating the name of Krishna or Rama, a man transforms his physical body into a spiritual body. To such a man, everything is the embodiment of spirit. To him, Krishna is the embodiment of spirit, and his sacred abode is the embodiment of spirit. He also said, a man who utters the name of Krishna or Rama even once reaps the results of 100 sandhyas. One of his sons chanted the name of Rama on his deathbed, and Krishna Kishore said, he has nothing to worry about. He has chanted the name of Rama. But now and then he still wept. After all, it was the death of his own son. Nothing whatsoever is achieved by the performance of worship, japa, and devotions without faith. Isn't that so? M. Yes, sir, that's true. Master, I see people coming to the Ganga to bathe. They talk their heads off about everything under the sun. The widowed aunt says, without me, they cannot perform the Durga Puja. I have to look after even the smallest detail. Again, I have to supervise everything when there's a marriage festival in the family, even the bed of the bride and groom. M. Why should we blame them? How else will they pass the time? Master with a smile. Some people have their shrine rooms in their attics. The women arrange the offerings and flowers and make the sandal paste, but while doing so, they never say a word about God. The burden of the conversation is, what shall we cook today? I couldn't get good vegetables at the market. That curry was delicious yesterday. That boy is the son of my cousin. Hello there. Have you still got that job? Don't ask me how I am. My Hari is no more. Just fancy, they talk of such things in the shrine room and at the time of worship. M. Yes, sir, it is so in the majority of cases. As you say, one who has passionate yearning for God and does one who has passionate yearning for God continue the formal worship and devotions for long? Sri Ramakrishna and M were now conversing alone. M. Sir, if it is God himself who has become everything, then why do people have such different feelings? Master, undoubtedly God exists in all beings as the all-pervading spirit, but the manifestations of his power are different in different beings. In some places there is a manifestation of the power of knowledge, in others the power of ignorance. In some places there is a greater manifestation of powers than in others. Don't you see that among human beings there are cheats and gamblers, to say nothing of men who are like tigers? I think of them as cheat god or tiger god. M with a smile. We should salute them from a distance. If we go near the tiger god and embrace him, he may devour us. Master, he and his divine power, Brahman and its power. Nothing else exists but this. In hymns to Rama, Narada said, Rama, you are Shiva, and Sita is Bhagavati. You are Brahma, and Sita is Brahmani. You are Indra, and Sita is Indrani. You are Narayana, and Sita is Lakshmi. O Rama, you are the symbol of all that is masculine, and Sita, all that is feminine. M. Sir, what is spirit form of God like? Sri Ramakrishna reflected for a moment and said softly, shall I tell you what it is like? It is like water. One understands all this through spiritual discipline. This reminds me of what we had read at the beginning, where he is seen as swimming in an ocean of bliss and water. But this is very interesting to me. He says, he's been asked, what is the spirit form of God like? And he says, it is like water. Believe in the forms of God. It is only after attaining Brahmagyani that one sees non-duality, the oneness of Brahman and its Shakti. Brahman and Shakti are identical, like fire and its power to burn. When a man thinks of the power to burn, he must also think of fire. Further, Brahman and Shakti are like milk and its whiteness, water and its wetness. But there's a stage beyond Brahmagyana. After jnana comes vijnana. He who is aware of knowledge is also aware of ignorance. The sage Vaishishta was stricken with grief at the death of his 100 sons. Asked by Lakshmana why a man of knowledge should grieve for such a reason, Rama said, brother, go beyond both knowledge and ignorance. He who has knowledge has ignorance also. If a thorn has entered your foot, get another thorn, and with its help take out the first, then throw away the second also. M. Should one throw away both knowledge and ignorance? Master, yes. That is why one should acquire vijnana. You see, he who is aware of light is also aware of darkness. He who is aware of happiness is also aware of suffering. He who is aware of virtue is also aware of vice. He who is aware of good is also aware of evil. He who is aware of holiness is also aware of unholiness. He who is aware of I is also aware of you. What is vijnana? It is knowing God in a special way. The awareness and conviction that fire exists in wood is jnana, knowledge. But to cook rice on that fire, eat the rice and get nourishment from it is vijnana. To know by one's inner experience that God exists is knowledge. But to talk to him, to enjoy him as a child or a friend, as master or beloved, is vijnana. The realization that God alone has become the universe and all its living beings is vijnana. According to one school of thought, God cannot be seen. Who sees whom? Is God outside you that you can see him? One sees only oneself. Having once entered the black water of the ocean, the ship does not come back, and so cannot describe that experience. It is true, sir. As you say, having climbed to the top of this monument, one becomes unaware of what is below: horses, carriages, men, women, houses, shops, offices, and so on. Master, I don't go to the Kali temple nowadays. Is that an offense? At one time, Narendra used to say, "What? He still goes to the Kali temple?" Every day you are in a new state of mind. How can you ever offend God? Master, someone said to Sen about Hriday, "He's very ill. Please bring 2 pieces of cloth and a couple of shirts for him. We will send them to his village." Sen offered only 2 rupees. How do you explain that? He has so much money and yet he's so miserly. What do you say to that? Those who seek God cannot behave that way. I mean, those whose goal is the attainment of knowledge. Master, God alone is the reality, and all else is unreal. Saturday, September 22nd, 1883. The Master was seated in the drawing room at Adar's house in Calcutta with Rakal, Adar, Ishan, and other devotees. Many gentlemen of the neighborhood were also present. It was afternoon. The Master was very fond of Ishan. He had been a superintendent of the Accountant General's office, and later on his children also occupied high government positions. One of them was a classmate of Narendra. Ishan's purse was always open for the poor and the needy, and when he retired from service, he devoted his time to spiritual practice and charity. He often visited Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineswar. Master to Ishan, please tell us the story of the boy who posted the letter. Ishan with a smile. A boy once heard that God is our creator, so he wrote a letter to God, setting forth prayers and all, and he posted it. The address he put on the envelope was heaven. Master with a smile. Did you hear that story? One succeeds in spiritual life when one develops the faith like that boy. To Ishan, tell about the renunciation of activities. Ishan, after the attainment of God, religious duties such as Sandhya drop away. One day, some people were sitting on the bank of the Ganges performing the Sandhya, but one of them abstained from it. On being asked the reason, he said, "I am observing a socha. I cannot perform the Sandhya ceremony." There's a footnote on this. A socha is a temporary defilement that is caused by the birth or death of a blood relative. If a man has that happen, a close relative, he can't perform the Sandhya or do the usual worship according to the tradition. They usually shave their head off too. I've seen that. Okay. In my case, the defilement is that due to both a birth and a death, my mother, ignorance, is dead, and my son, self-knowledge, has been born. That is why I can no longer perform the Sandhya. Master, tell us also how caste distinction drops away when one attains self-knowledge. Ishan, Shankaracharya was once climbing the steps. After finishing his bath in the Ganges, when he saw just in front of him an untouchable who had a pack of dogs with him. "You have touched me," said Shankara. "Revered sir," said the pariah, "I have not touched you, nor have you touched me. The self is the inner ruler of all beings and cannot be contaminated. Is there any difference between the sun's reflection in wine and its reflection on the Ganga?" That place is actually in Varanasi. I used to walk by there, and I knew the person that lived right there where this story supposedly took place. Master with a smile. About harmony. How can one realize God through all paths? Ishan smiling. Both Hari and Hara are derived from the same root. The difference is only in pratyaya. In reality, he who is Hari is also Hara. If a man has faith in God, then it doesn't matter whom he worships. Master, and please tell us how the heart of the sadhu is the greatest of all. Ishan, this earth is the largest thing we see anywhere around us, but larger than the earth is the ocean, and larger than the ocean is the sky. But Vishnu, the Godhead, has covered both earth, sky, and the netherworld with one of his feet, and that foot of Vishnu is enshrined in the sadhu's heart. Therefore, the heart of the holy man is the greatest of all. The devotees were delighted with Ishan's words. Ishan intended to retire to a solitary place and practice special discipline of the Gayatri, through which Brahman is evoked. But the master had said that the knowledge of Brahman was not possible without complete destruction of worldliness. Further, he said it was impossible for a man totally to withdraw his mind from the objects of the senses in the Kali Yuga, when his life was dependent on food. That is why the master discouraged people from attempting the Vedic worship of Brahman and asked them to worship Shakti, the Divine Mother, who is identified with Brahman. Master to Ishan, why do you waste your time simply repeating neti neti? Nothing whatsoever can be specified by Brahman except that it exists. Whatever we see or think about is a manifestation of the glory of the primal energy, the primal consciousness, creation, preservation, and destruction, living beings in the universe, and further meditation, the meditator, bhakti, and prema. All these are manifestations of the glory of that power. But Brahman is identical with its power. On return from Ceylon, Hanuman praised Rama, saying, "O Rama, you are the supreme Brahman. Sita is your Shakti. You and she are identical. Brahman and Shakti are like the snake and the wiggling motion. Think of the snake, and most of us will think of the wriggling motion. Think of its wriggling motion, and most of us will think of a snake. Or they're like milk and its whiteness. Thinking of milk, one has to think of the color and that whiteness. And thinking of the whiteness of milk, one has to think of milk itself. Or they say it's like water and its wetness. Thinking of water, one has to think of the wetness. And thinking of the wetness of water, one has to think of water. This primordial power, Mahamaya, has covered Brahman. As soon as the covering is withdrawn, one realizes, I am what I was before. I am thou, and thou art I. As long as that covering remains, the Vedic formula, I am he, that is, man is the supreme Brahman, does not rightly apply. The wave is part of the water, but the water is not part of the wave. As long as the covering remains, one should call on God as mother. Addressing God, the devotee should say, Thou art the mother. I am the child. Thou art the master, I am thy servant. It is good to have the attitude of servant toward the master. From this relationship of master and servant springs up all the attitudes, the attitude of serene love of God, the attitude of friend toward friend, and so forth. When the master loves his servant, he may say to him, "Come, sit by my side. There is no difference between you and me." But if the servant comes forward of his own will and sits by the master, will not the master get angry? God plays on earth as an incarnation, and it is the manifestation of the glory of Chit Shakti, the divine power. That which is Brahman is also Ramakrishna and Shiva, Ishan. Yes, both Hari and Hara are derived from the same root. The difference lies only in the pratyaya. Master, yes, there is only one without a second. The Vedas speak of it as Om Satchidananda Brahman, the Puranas as Om Satchidananda Krishna, and the Tantra as Om Satchidananda Shiva. The Chit Shakti as Mahamaya has deluded all with ignorance. It is said in the Adhyatma Ramayana that when the rishis saw Rama, they prayed to him with these words, "O Rama, please do not delude us with thy world-bewitching Maya." Ishan, what is this Maya? Master, whatever you see, think, hear is Maya. In a word, lust and gold is covered with Maya. There is no harm in chewing betel leaf, eating fish, smoking, or rubbing the body with oil. What will one achieve by renouncing only these things? The one thing needful is the renunciation of lust and greed. That renunciation is the real supreme renunciation. Householders should go into solitude now and then to practice spiritual disciplines in order to cultivate an attitude toward God. They should renounce mentally. But the sannyasi should not renounce, he should renounce both mentally and physically. Once I said to Keshav, how can a typhoid patient be cured if he remains in a room where a pitcher of water and a jar of pickles are kept? Now and then one should live in solitude. A devotee, sir, what do you think of Navavidyan? It seems to me like a hodgepodge of everything. That's the new dispensation that the Brahma Samaj was teaching. Master, some say it's a modern thing. That sets me wondering, when is the God of the Brahma Samaj a new God? The Brahmos speak of their cult as Navavidyan, as the new dispensation. Well, it may be so. Who knows? There are 6 systems of philosophy, so perhaps it's like one of these. But do you know where those who speak of the formless God make their mistake? It is when they say that God is formless only, and that those who differ from them are wrong. But I know God is both with and without form, and he may have many more aspects. It is possible for him to be everything to Ishan, like Chit Shakti, Mahamaya has become the 24 cosmic principles. One day I was meditating and my mind wandered away to Rakhal's house. One day I was meditating and my mind wandered away to Rashke's house. He's a scavenger, and I said to my mind, "Stay there, you rogue." The Divine Mother revealed to me that the men and women in this house were made of masks. Inside of them was the same divine power, Kundalini, that rises up the 6 spiritual centers of the body. It is the primordial energy. Is it man or woman? Once at Kamarpukur, I saw the worship of Kali in the house of the Lahas. They put on her a sacred thread on the image of the Divine Mother. One man asked, "Why have they put a sacred thread on the Divine Mother's person?" The master of the house said, "Brother, I see you have rightly understood the Mother, but I do not know yet whether the Divine Mother is male or female. It is said that Mahamaya swallowed Shiva, and when the 6 centers in him were awakened, Shiva came out through her thigh. Then Shiva created the Tantra philosophy. Take refuge in Chit Shakti, Mahamaya. Ishan, please bestow your grace on me. Master, say to God with a guileless heart, God, reveal thyself to me." I think I will end there. I could read one more description of Sri Ramakrishna since I have a few here. This one is by Bhavatarini Ma. She was just a little girl when she met Sri Ramakrishna, and there's a beautiful book called Divine Joy of Play, and it has descriptions of her sitting on his lap, and her relationship with him was very unique. So Bhavatarini Ma remembers one of her experiences with Sri Ramakrishna. She said, "This was the last day I was to stay. As soon as I got up from sleep, I went straight to Thakur's room. I caught his right hand and gave it a pull, and he said, 'Sit in the room, I'm coming now.' Instead of entering the room, I sat on the veranda. I see that Thakur's gone inside the courtyard. After a long time, he returned and entered the room. He seemed to be looking all over for something. Then he came outside and found a little wooden stool, which he took inside with him. I was watching everything through the open door. Thakur sat on the wooden stool, and I looked at him with full gaze. My goodness. Even while I was looking, he gradually became full of light. What a sight, as if 1,000 suns were shining. As the light enveloped me on every side, I could hear a sound. I felt that I was being dissolved in waves of light. Somehow or other, I tried to feel my way to Thakur, but I could only utter, Thakur, you are Thakur. Thakur means Lord. You are God. Please tell me you are God. Oh, Thakur, make me know you are God. The light was so bright. Only by guessing could I go to him. I'd lost the power to stand, and I fell on his body. After this, I don't know what happened. When I became conscious again, I was sitting on Thakur's lap. He was stroking my body with his hand, but there was no feeling in my body. So we can end with that. I think Bhaktiprana actually met this woman. She lived for many, many years. She was one of the last of the people who'd actually seen Sri Ramakrishna to be with us. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is he still the same.